Some pieces of advice, though brief and vague at first glance, hold the power to turn an entire life around. Some decisions aren't shaped by our circumstances, but by the way we choose to see them. Today's story begins in a quiet seaside village where a reclusive old woman lived in solitude, famous for her strange yet profoundly wise words. One blazing summer day, two young souls, a girl and a boy, came seeking her counsel, each carrying the weight of their own exhaustion. Both stood on the edge of choice, to stay or to leave, to endure or to let go. And then, with just 5 simple words, the old woman sent them down 2 entirely different paths. Yet strangely enough, both paths led to happiness. So, which answer was the right one? Let's step into the story. It's just a wave. On the central coast of Vietnam, where waves gently kiss the white sands like the steady breaths of time, there lies a small village nestled against the hillside. Here, among the whispering pines and salt-kissed winds, locals still tell tales of a hermit woman who lives alone in an old wooden house deep within a casuarina forest. She is in her 70s now. Her hair is white as clouds, yet her eyes still hold the depth and brightness of a midsummer night sky. People call her the Pathfinder, for as long as anyone can remember, those who've lost their way need only find her, and she will offer a piece of advice. Short, strange, but powerful enough to change the course of a life forever. Perhaps it was that legend that led 2 strangers to this coastal village on an early August morning. They had never met before, but they shared something unspoken, silent wounds carried from the chaos of city life. The girl was Lynn, 26 years old, once a top student, now an office worker at a major media company. But after 3 years of grinding labor, she felt like a shadow of herself. Dismissed, overworked, suffocated by pressure. Each morning she awoke with the same haunting question: am I living or merely existing? The young man was Hung, 28, working in customer service. Every day he smiled. Every day he nodded politely. Every day he swallowed the anger of people who never knew his name. Over time, he began to feel like a machine, obedient, emotionless, worn down. They were both exhausted. Both had thought about quitting, but fear held them back. If I walk away, what will I live on? Am I just being weak for wanting to let go? And so, as if something deep within them had called out, both found their way to the old woman. Not to hear a clear escape, but to find a new question, a new way of seeing. They wanted to know, could life be different? Is there a path that lets me be truly me? When Lynn and Hung met at the narrow trail leading up to the old house, they exchanged a polite smile. No word were needed. They both understood. The other was also searching for themselves. Together, they walked on toward the time-worn house beneath the whispering trees where the old woman waited, each carrying the same quiet question in their hearts. Should I keep going or should I stop? The old woman's house sat quietly among the casuarina trees, humble and weathered, much like the life she had lived. The wooden doors creaked open just enough to let a warm, gentle light spill out. Lynn and Hung stepped inside, their footsteps suddenly lighter, as if the air here belonged to another world, quiet, calm, and deeply present. The old woman was sitting on a small bamboo chair, her eyes half closed as if in slumber. But within moments, she opened them, slowly, deliberately, and looked at the 2 strangers as though she had been expecting them for a very long time. No one spoke at first. They simply bowed respectfully, then sat down on the woven mat at her feet. A long silence passed. Then Lynn spoke softly. "Grandmother, I don't know where to begin. I'm working a job that drains me more every day. I'm not respected. I'm not seen. I feel like I'm losing myself. I just want to know, should I quit?" Hung nodded beside her. "I feel the same, grandmother. Every day I wear a mask. Customers yelling, bosses pressuring me. All I can do is swallow it. I don't feel like I'm really living anymore. So, should I keep going or should I walk away?" The old woman didn't answer right away. She closed her eyes again, took a slow breath, as if listening to something deeper, something neither of them could hear. The room fell into stillness. Only the distant whisper of ocean wind slipped through the cracks in the wooden walls. Lin and Hung looked at each other, then back at the woman, their hearts quietly hoping for something clear. A direction, a sign. Then she opened her eyes. Her gaze, calm yet piercing, seemed to see everything all at once. And instead of offering a long explanation or a list of advice, she spoke just 5 words. 5 gentle words, yet they rang out like a bell in the stillness. It's just a wave. She smiled faintly, offering no further explanation. Her eyes returned to their peaceful stillness, as if the meeting had already ended. Lin and Hung looked at each other, confused. They didn't understand the meaning, at least not right away. But for some reason, neither of them asked for more. There was something in the woman's gaze that told them. The answer was not meant to be explained. It was meant to be discovered. They bowed their heads in gratitude, then quietly stepped out of the old wooden house, each carrying with them a new question, unclear, yet deeply stirring. It's just a wave. What does that mean? The path leading out of the casuarina forest felt longer without the sound of crashing waves, just the quiet tide of thoughts rising and falling within. Lin and Hung walked side by side for a while in silence, until finally Hung broke it. It's just a wave. Was that really all she meant to say? Lin thought for a moment, then replied softly, I think she was talking about the struggles we're going through. They're like waves, coming and going. If we're patient, if we stay steady, every wave eventually passes. Hung nodded slowly, but his gaze drifted toward the horizon. But maybe she meant that this job, all this pressure we're under, it's not really as huge as we've made it out to be. It's just a wave in the vast ocean of life. So why should we let it drown out everything we feel, everything we stand for? Lin paused in her steps. 2 interpretations, completely opposite, yet both somehow true. She turned to him. So what are you going to do? Hung smiled, calm and clear. You know, when she said those words, something inside me just clicked. If it's really just a wave, why keep struggling in waters that don't fit me anymore? Maybe it's time I swim somewhere else, somewhere I can steer my own boat. Lin's eyes widened. You mean you're quitting? Yeah, I'm heading back to my hometown. I'll help my parents with the garden. I want to build something with my hands. I'm done living a life that doesn't feel honest. She stayed quiet for a moment, looking at her new companion with a touch of admiration. Then her gaze softened, and she shook her head gently. For me, it's the opposite. Just a wave means don't let carry me away. I've let other people's emotions define my worth for too long. Maybe what she was telling me is, stand firm. The wave will pass, and I'll be stronger because of it. Hung chuckled. 2 meanings, 2 directions. Funny how that works, huh? And yet, both started with the same 5 words. I think that's what makes it beautiful. They parted ways at the village crossroad. One path led to the main road, back to the bustling city. The other, down a dirt road toward quiet farmland and open skies. One phrase, it's just a wave, had led them to 2 entirely different choices. But there was no regret, no doubt, because in that moment, for the first time in a long time, each of them had truly listened to themselves. The path leading out of the casuarina forest felt longer without the sound of the waves. Only thoughts now surged inside them like a restless tide. Lin and Hung walked side by side in silence for a long while, until Hung softly spoke. Just a wave. Was that really all she meant? Lin thought for a moment, then slowly replied. I think she was talking about the hardships we're facing. They're like ocean waves. They come and go. If we stay steady and patient, every wave eventually passes. Hung nodded, but his gaze drifted off into the distance. But maybe she meant that our jobs, all the things we're enduring, they're really not that huge. They're just one wave in the vast ocean of life. So why let wash away our emotions, our values, our sense of self? Lin stopped walking. 2 completely opposite interpretations, yet both made sense. She looked at Hung. So what are you going to do? Hung gave a quiet smile. You know, when she said those words, something inside me became clear. If it's really just a wave, then why keep struggling in waters that no longer fit me? Maybe it's time I swim in a different direction, somewhere I can steer my own ship. Lin's eyes widened. You mean you're quitting your job? Yeah, I'm going back to my hometown. Gonna help my parents with the garden. Do something with my own 2 hands. I'm done living a life that doesn't feel honest. She stayed quiet, looking at her new friend with a hint of admiration. But then, her gaze softened, and she gently shook her head. For me, it's the opposite. Just a wave means I shouldn't let it carry me away. I've spent too long letting other people's emotions decide my worth. Maybe what she was telling me was, stand firm. The wave will pass, and I'll be stronger because of it. Hung lauget, two meanings, two directions. Kind of amazing, huh? And yet both started from the same 5 words. I think that's what makes it special. They parted ways at the village crossroads. One path leading to the highway and back to the city, the other down a dirt road toward peaceful countryside. One phrase, just a wave, had led them to 2 entirely different choices. But there was no judgment, no doubt, because in that quiet moment, for the first time in a long while, each had truly listened to themselves. A late autumn afternoon, when golden sunlight still lingered on leaves swaying gently in the breeze, Lynn happened to pass through a riverside village on a work trip, the very place where she and Hung had once parted ways at a quiet fork in the road. Driven by curiosity and a touch of nostalgia, she turned down the familiar dirt path, unaware that she was about to see an old friend again. Hung was sitting under the large mango tree in front of his house, carefully weaving a bamboo basket, an old craft he had learned from his grandfather. When he caught sight of the familiar figure stepping out of the shiny car, he stood up in surprise. Ding. Hey, it's been a long time. They both laughed. No need for explanations, no awkwardness. The warmth they once shared was still there, untouched by time. They sat beneath the rustling branches and caught up on the 5 years that had passed. Lynn spoke of near burnouts, of pressure that pushed her to the edge, and how she learned to let go, to stand firm. Hung talked about seasons of drought, and then the sweet, satisfying day when he picked the first fruit from his own garden. They had both succeeded. They had both found happiness. But then came a pause as Hung slowly asked, "Do you ever wonder what the old woman really meant that day?" Lynn looked up, the soft light of dusk catching the edge of her eyes. "All the time. That phrase, just a wave, it changed my whole life. But sometimes, I still wonder if I understood it the right way." Hung notet geda ditstan. Me too. Sometimes I think, if I'd stayed that day, who would I be now? And if you'd left, maybe you would have found a gentler life too. We both heard the same advice, yet chose 2 completely different paths. And the strangest part is neither of us regrets it. Lings my. A final ray of sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow in their deep, thoughtful eyes. They sat in silence, as if waiting for something. Then, almost simultaneously, their eyes met, sharing a question that had never been spoken aloud. Which of us understood her best? What if we went back to find her? Hung said, half joking, but Lynn nodded just slightly. In her eyes was a quiet excitement, like her heart was whispering yes. And so, 2 people, grown, peaceful, but still full of wonder, set off once again, back to where it all began. To listen, one more time. The seaside village from all those years ago seemed almost untouched by time. The rows of casuarina trees still bowed gently in the wind, and the narrow dirt path still led down to that quiet stretch of sand, where the old woman had once sat beside a weathered wooden boat, waiting for lost souls to find their way. Lynn and Hung walked side by side in silence, hearts pounding like children returning to a childhood they thought they'd left behind. And then they saw her. She was still there, thinner than before, her hair whiter, but the gentle smile on her lips had not changed. When she saw them, she nodded softly, knowingly, like she had expected this day to come at just this moment. Without many words, they sat down before her, their eyes full of quiet reverence. Lynn was the first to speak. "Ma'am, years ago you told us, just a wave." That one sentence changed both of our lives, but in completely different ways. I stayed and learned to stand firm through the storms. Hung left to find calmer seas. Hung continued, his voice low, "But even now, we don't really know what you truly meant. Which path was right?" The old woman smiled. Her clouded eyes, deep as the sea, glimmered with the compassion of someone who had weathered many storms. She closed her eyes briefly, listening, not just to the wind and the waves, but to the hearts of the two people sitting before her. Then she opened them and said 5 simple words. Just a different way of seeing. Lin and Hung froze. So short a sentence, yet it felt like a key, unlocking a door inside them that had long been shut. The old woman looked at them, her voice as light as the sea breeze. This life, everyone faces waves. Some choose to stand and face them. Others choose to turn and find a different shore. Neither is wrong, because every soul has its own way of seeking peace. What I said was never an answer. It was only a mirror for each of you to see the path already written in your heart. They sat still, overcome with a surge of emotion they couldn't quite name. They had come so far, built meaningful lives, found joy, but only now did they truly understand. The key lies in how you choose to see, not in the situation, and not in someone else's answer. The sun began to set, casting golden-orange hues across the surface of the sea. The old woman rose gently to her feet and placed a soft hand on their shoulders. Keep going. The waves will still come. But now you know how to read them, don't you? They didn't speak. They simply nodded, silently, deeply, feeling a calm in their hearts like never before. Life doesn't always give us clear answers. Sometimes a vague piece of advice holds an entire treasure of wisdom if we know how to listen with our hearts. Just a wave, just a different way of thinking, the same words, yet each person understands them differently. One stays behind and finds strength in resilience. Another walks away and finds peace in a quieter land. No one is wrong. No one is more right. Because there isn't just one path to happiness in this life. In the end, the most important thing isn't which path you choose, but what you come to understand about yourself when you're standing at that crossroads. So, if you're feeling lost between choices, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this wave truly threatening me, or is it just a test? Then listen, really listen to your heart, because somewhere deep inside, there's always one answer that's been waiting, meant only for you.